introduce our speaker, John Lim. So John, thank you for joining us. John is the founder and creative director of This Humid House. I've been actually following his work since I've been living in Singapore. I'm a huge fan of plants and flowers and anything that's tropical since I moved to Singapore. So I'm really honored to have John here with us today. A little bit about John. He is a trained architect and a graduate of the Cooper Union in New York City, and has practiced in several places in the world, like New York, Tokyo, and Beijing. He returned to Singapore in 2015 and founded this botanical studio, This Humid House, shortly after. He leads a team of designers in developing a language expressed through plants and flowers that is sensitive to local climate and culture. And I think this is going to come through his work, and you're going to see how Singapore is really shaping his work. The studio's output ranges in scale from the very small things to the very large, really, to the design of a park. And I think this comes also through his background as an architect and landscape designer. So I will let you view a video before John will join us. Hand it back to Michael for now.
My name is Françoise, and I'm the head of design at This Humid House. For your viewing pleasure in this time of confinement, I'm pleased to create for you an arrangement made with 5 ingredients. In this stone basin, I've built a skeleton out of king coconuts, so common to Singapore and special because of the orange color of its fruits. King coconut is native to Sri Lanka and now endemic to Southeast Asia. To create a form, I use the sculptural leaf of the sabal palm, super complex in its geometry. You see, the leaf actually turns in on itself, looking like a mohawk. Palm leaves are so powerful. Just 4 leaves give this piece a kind of aggressive tropical energy that we soften with the flowers of the crêpe myrtle. Its papery petals are so extremely delicate. They look like they are always on the edge of expiration. For a punch of color, I've buried some marigold deep within the arrangement. You can see its vibrancy even through the nest of crepe myrtle. When with something really special, I finished this arrangement with some cartoonish cannonball fruits. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope to see you very soon back at Stretch Club.
Good morning, John.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Let me just toggle over to the slideshow. 1 second. Okay, play. Hi. Hi, Luana. Good morning.
Hi, good
How's
morning.
everyone? How's everyone? This is such an interesting time to be alive. I'd like to thank a few people. I'd like to thank you for reaching out to me. This is
Thank you for accepting.
Thank you. This is such a tremendous opportunity to share what we're doing, and I feel like even as a studio, we've really evolved in the past month in response to all these things that have been happening all around us. I'd like to thank Creative Mornings. I'd like to thank the Hive for hosting this. I'd also love to thank my team for setting this up. I think the brief I gave to them yesterday was give me a vacation in Dubai.
So they set up that specifically for Creative Mornings. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, they did. I just wanted to do something that would be transporting. Yeah. Anyway.
So what do you have there? What plants do you have around you?
So actually, these are date palm leaves. These are all from my home.
Okay.
And I have a garden back home, and I harvest from it sometimes. And so we were using this in an installation, or we were just using it to test a few things. And so just left behind in the studio. That's what they made it with.
So you're back in the studio at the moment, right?
Yes. We're thankful that we're allowed to operate in the studio, but it's just me in the morning. And you know what? It's really early. It's 8:30. I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank anyone who's woken up and drunk that extra cup of coffee just to be here today. Yeah. Okay, let me start. I think I want to address the video, and I think the video was something that I wanted to show because, in a nutshell, it really sums up what we're trying to do at Human House. And we want to celebrate the flora of this climate. And like you said, we're really trying to develop a language through plants and flowers that is really representative of our life in the tropics. You just want something that feels relevant to you. In some ways, you want your region, your culture, your geography to feel seen. And it's something that, I feel like I've always kind of wanted to do all my life because I haven't really seen it being represented, and I think, in terms of aspects of botanical design, I think we were very much influenced by a kind of a Western idea of it. And I think it's something that I really want to explore. And I think the last thing is that I think our work really needs to have an evocative or kind of emotional resonance. If not, really, there's not much of a point. And in order to do this, we're actually using natural materials. And I think this is such a good segue into this quote that I'm about to share. First of all, for all of you who've woken up this early or tuned in, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I have no great epiphany about nature. I have no devastatingly enlightening nugget of wisdom to pass on to you. But what I do have to share, I think, and this is going to be evident from all our work, is this is really the result of countless observations that we've all had as a team, myself and the team, have had from encounters with nature. And, it's been for me a tremendous source of almost like a private pleasure growing up and through my life that is now not so private that I'm, sharing even on a daily basis through our work and with the team. And what I'm really here to do is encourage everyone in their journey. And it's a journey towards having a personal relationship with nature. This sounds like church, but it really is about
the relationship with nature, right? Like, I think that's why we're here today, to know what the relationship with nature really is. Yeah.
Absolutely. And everyone who works at Human House has a personal relationship with nature. And it's really such a blessing and a delight to be able to delight everyone with, as we were delighted by nature at the same time. And
this takes me to my next question. Why are you drawn to working with plants? I think it would be great to start with that. Just kind of what got you here? How did you get started? And what brings you joy every day? Because like you can see a lot of passion in your work. So definitely there's like a deep relationship to nature and plants.
Sure. You know what? Some things I just I can't really explain, like my fascination with nature. I definitely grew up around it. I had a grandfather who was really, very much green thumbs, and he would grow everything from like okra. And I remember like, you know, from a young age, like looking at okra that was like this big and being really amazed by it. And I think they're definitely, you know, we had a backyard, and, you know, growing things and like plants were always like in my vocabulary, I would say. And even at church, I like volunteered to do like floral arrangements growing up. So like, I think I really had a kind of very easy relationship with living material. You know, I've
So
always
it's always been around you, basically. It's something that it was almost so obvious that it came back to you after, you turned to Singapore.
And like every kid, you know, like there's a curiosity with like collecting driftwood, collecting seashells, you know, those things.
Yeah.
Even like rocks, right? I mean, like, you know, rocks are such miraculous creations, really just like nuggets of time. Yeah. I want to show you this leaf, and I think this is familiar to a lot of people, but maybe they haven't seen it in this context. 1 second. And this is the leaf of a fan palm, the Laquala grandis. It has these pleats like an accordion, but this is not actually how the leaf behaves in real life. It doesn't like flop open and close. I think when it grows out, it's closed, but then it gradually opens up. And I, you know, like this, I probably took like 200 videos of this, but I was so thrilled when I saw this, when I, you know, took the leaf and kind of played with it. And I think it is the kind of curiosity that I'd like to encourage and foster with people. I mean, it's not just like looking at nature, it's like touch it, hold it,
the
feel
movement of it is,
look at the beautiful like architecture and geometry of that leaf, you know, really appreciate what that leaf is doing, you know.
Actually, now that you mentioned that, I know you're trained as an architect, so, and I see a lot of that coming through your work. Would you say that it influences your work in a big way? I mean, when you look at things, when you start putting installations together, like how has it helped you in seeing things a little bit differently?
I have to say, like, I am so grateful that I was trained as an architect, and I think it's really taught me to look at design and think about space at every scale, you know, every scale possible. And, you know, I've really, through just architecture training, learned to be very observant and sensitive to detail and the micro, and even to just space and the macro. And so I think, you know, like when we're doing in all aspects of botanical design, whether you work on something small and working on the mechanics of something and how you put together something, to like, you know, designing for a space and going into like a ballroom, for example, or like a church, and like, or like a venue, and then like reading the space and knowing what you need to put in there to really honor that space. I think that's all come in super, super handy as a botanical designer, all that architecture training. And this is actually the same leaf, the Koala grandis, but it's in a different form now. So it's semi-dried. It's not fresh anymore. And this is a weird trick that we discovered by accident. We discovered that if you actually dry it in darkness, it preserves some of its greenness. It doesn't, it'll eventually fade to brown. But it's got this like very kind of cool metallic sheen now, and it's something that we were like so thrilled by. And I don't know,
so
like,
how long does it... Sorry.
Yeah, so it takes about a week and a half to get
for it to dry like that. Oh,
yeah.
wow. And how did you dry it like this? Like, is it, or is this the natural way that it just dries?
The natural way that it dries. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Not sure if many of you know, like the designer Issey Miyake and his line pleats, line of clothing which incorporates pleats. And like we're just so, it really looked like, you know, a piece of clothing from that line.
It does make me think of their work. It's really crazy. So was that your brief? Like, what was your brief for this one, for example? Like, what did they ask you to create?
That's such a good question. The actual brief was, make this look like an armadillo.
So how did you do that? Like, how did you, so, okay, you dried it, but like, how did you actually create the installation? What was your first thought of approaching?
I have to give Philip credit for this. And Philip used to work for us. And this was a piece that we did fairly early on in the life of our studio. and we only had 4 leaves that were curled up. And believe it or not, this is Philip spending almost, I would say, 2 hours with just 4 leaves, struggling with it, and eventually getting somewhere where I was like, oh my God, this is it. You know,
they would break easily, right? Because dried flowers are so much more sensitive, or no?
This is actually pretty robust. It's actually really robust. Yeah. And so like we were all surprised. And when I saw this, I was like, Philip, this is it. Yeah. This is an armadillo here. And you know, I think, you know, it really celebrates each leaf. You know, it's kind of like, it's kind of precious in that way. You know, this might have been torn up or like fallen by the wayside or just drying by the side of the road. You wouldn't take 2 looks at it. But yeah, putting it in this context and in this kind of presentation on like almost like a pedestal, like really kind of honors it.
So where did this live? Did this live in, you know, in an installation form, or was it, I guess, where did Issey Miyake use it?
So we're so fortunate to have a retail store at Straits Clan, which is a members club in Singapore, which the whole even conception of the club is so aligned with our ethos, is making a club that's sort of relevant to modern day life and, you know, and the context that we live in. And so this was actually a piece that we did at Straits Clan that was displayed in their at the reception.
Okay.
This is another piece that we did at Straits Clan, and it's also on the reception. And, you know, it really encapsulates a lot of the things that we try to go after. And if you see those white lines, they're actually the dried flowers of the asahi palm. A lot of people know asahi because its berries are really healthy for you. And it's got these like swooping lines that I thought really evoked almost like the feathers of the bird of paradise. And then we combined it with really beautiful slipper orchids that are quite unusual. I wouldn't say they're rare, but they are definitely unusual.
And are the orchids from Singapore? Where do you bring your plants from? Is it mostly from here, or is it a mix of places?
We have a commitment to using the flora of the region. You know, a lot of things are not commercially available in Singapore, but in terms of sourcing, we actually actively choose flora that has less miles to travel. So I would say we actively get from our suppliers material from Thailand, Vietnam, China, Taiwan, Japan, and these orchids actually were from Taiwan.
And when you approach a brief, do you, do you start with, you know, the materials, the shape, like the color? What do you start with? I think that's, as a creative process, it's almost like, yeah, I'm just curious to know kind of how you approach.
Such a great question. And I really feel like it's different almost every time. Like you can at one point be materially inspired and go like, oh my goodness, look at this palm and fluorescence. Like this is like the main ingredient I want to work with. So that's kind of focused in that way. Actually, a lot of the time it's kind of materially focused. But then also I would say 99% of the time we work through intuition. Right. And we've really learned to listen to that voice. And we've discovered through our work that oftentimes, like almost like 90% of the time, the first idea we have by instinct is often the best one. And so we've learned to really like not drown that out because it can be lost really easily. Yeah. Bird in flight. This is another piece that we did at Straits Clan, and it's got the kind of similar aggressive energy. It almost looks like, you know, a cartoon drawing of like a pow.
Oh, it does. I see that now.
Yeah. And this is our head of design, Francoise, and she's working on this piece on the sideboard, which is the same location that we've done this on in the video. This is really this has been such a trip. Like we've been doing this arrangement on this, like various arrangements on this sideboard every single week for about 2 years.
Every single week. And how long does it take to create? I mean, to create the pieces?
You know, when we first started out, we would spend like half a day. And now I feel like the designers have a kind of confidence moving forward to really attack a piece and within like 25 minutes. And, you know, I think, but a lot of the work is in the preparation, right? It's in the
Yeah.
sourcing for material. It's in like the conceptualizing of what we're going to use. It's planning, all of those things.
So
But I
how
think
long in advance would you say that you'd have to, you know, do all that planning, the sourcing, the maybe sketching, the preparing, the mood boarding, all of it before you actually create a piece?
Sometimes we don't even do all of that. We just make it.
Okay.
At other times, we go, and this, it can be like, you know, towards the end of a season of like, say these foxtail flowers, and we're like, oh, we love them so much. Let's make a note on our calendar to use it next year around this season. So like, you know, it can be immediate. It can be in the span of a year where we make an observation and we accommodate for that. So it really is like, everything's like kind of in flux. Yeah. And that's kind of the excitement of working here, or the chaos. Yeah. And we also like, you know, I think big installations and big arrangements may not be so accessible to a lot of people because they're like, oh, how do I apply it to my life? We, you know, we really try to at all scales be very consistent with our ethos. And these are some arrangements that we've made into bouquets and, you know, are that we've made for retail, available at Straits Clan or online. And we've used a really just like a bounty of orchids, local ingredients, locally sourced ingredients as well. And this is like really a way that I wanted to move forward with when I started Human House. For me, it was, you know, like the pleasure of receiving flowers, for example, was a little bit diminished when I couldn't really relate to it. Like I never, like if you like say got roses or hydrangeas, like, you know, I never grew up around that. And so it was like, oh, it's a beautiful gift. But for some reason, like I wanted that extra relatability to it. And so I think this is something that I carried with me through like really all my life. And I think this was something that I've always wanted to do. And living the dream.
Yeah, you really are.
And I just really wanted to show this because, you know, we had such a heart to show what an embarrassment of riches tropical flowers had to offer. And this is an all orchid arrangement. And it's so celebratory, it's so full, it's so exuberant. And, you know, we call it the Orchid Overdose. And it's really a labor of love because it's, you know, the material is actually sourced from 6 places. And, you know, we have these like, you know, this orchid on the top right, with these feelers or antenna. And that's actually from an orchid grower in Singapore. And, you know, we kind of cajoled him into giving it up. So whenever we sell this, we know like our profit margin is like 0.
Yeah.
But really, because like of the effort it takes to procure everything, but like we're so happy when someone does order it because it gives us the opportunity to really show things off. And there's so much going on here. So many orchid varieties, you know, orchids that look like antelope horns.
Do you carry this in your online store in Straits Clan too, or is this available?
Yes, I actually believe that it's been such a hassle to make this that they've taken it off the store for now. But I think we're going to find a more sustainable way of bringing it.
To figure it out to be a bit more profitable too. Yeah.
And this is our store at Straits Clan, and you know, I think it's closed now because of the crisis. But you know, go ahead.
What would you say is your biggest lesson during, I mean, it's closed, and what would you say is your biggest lesson during the circuit breaker now?
Oh, we've learned so much. And I think what this has made us really do is, number one, we get to work on projects that were on the back burner from a long time ago. Yeah. And I've always wanted to grow stuff. I've always wanted to grow stuff that was not commercially available. I've wanted to experiment with a material that I've seen around that I know will survive in this climate, but I've not seen grown here before. So this is really a time to dig deep, literally. We have started a garden where we've already seen the fruits of our labor. We are actually harvesting material from this garden, and 20% of all retail products will actually feature material that we've grown ourselves. And this is something that has resulted from this time of confinement.
So what do you have now in your garden? Like, what is it that you're focusing on? What are some of the plants and the materials?
We are going to work with what the climate can do for us. And so we're growing hybrid and heirloom varieties of sunflowers, marigold, cosmos, and actually a lot of vegetables. Well, actually, corn is not a vegetable, it's actually a grass. We're growing corn, and like we're growing corn from like the most amazing species of heirloom Mexican varieties. So we have Oaxacan corn, blue corn, and even like corn that looks like little gems or tic tac. So I just can't wait for that to actually.
How long does that take to harvest? Like, I think that's like such a like looking into the future, right? And planning for the
You know
future.
what? Not so long. 45 days
Oh,
for
okay.
marigold and 120 days for corn. So
That's not bad.
it's
I
3 months.
imagined it longer.
So actually, I think in the next 2 weeks, we're gonna get our first big harvest already. But
Right,
even then,
exciting.
we're growing a lot of foliage that we use in our range. Yeah, I wanted to show this because a boutonniere, you know, people often wear this, and men often wear this on their lapel. Men and women actually, is such a small thing. It's, you know, and I think that I just wanted to show this for scale. A lot of consideration even goes into boutonniere, and I think that, you know, it's such, I consider this the haiku of botanical products, because you have to very succinctly, with just a few ingredients, say something, right? And I always insist on this with my team, that everything they make needs to have a point of view. And here you have these little green baubles. They look like berries. They're actually sea grapes. And it's from a coastal plant that's native to Singapore. And it looks really cute. We have Martagon lilies, which is that blush pink thing. And we've paired it with Ixia. And really, like, succinctly in one, it's almost like a chef who really wants to experience something in one bite. A boutonniere in one bite needs to, like, you need to feel something from it. And like, there's a kind of like joy and cuteness that I think is really encapsulated in the design of this boutonniere. I love it.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how you approach scale, because I think this is such a small thing in comparison to, but you kind of, you add in the same amount of work and emotion, right? So
Absolutely. And this is, you know, on the flip side, something that would be on a large scale. And this,
yeah.
for those of you who are familiar with this venue, this is the Dempsey Cookhouse. You know, we really kind of like played off the lushness of the bar. So the greenery above the bar is not ours, it's actually the restaurant's.
Okay.
And we really wanted to add to the space with this forest of bamboo coming in from the sides that is kind of that kind of plays with the space between the huge lanterns that you see over there.
Yep.
And really, it's about creating, and this is for a wedding. So we really wanted to express the exuberance and joy of the occasion. And this is what I mean by something that feels contextual. You know, like all this is material that, you know, from the yellow Insidium orchids, all this is material that you know, we're familiar with, and you know, it's used to honor this occasion. And spatially, I feel like, you know, this was incredibly successful.
It's beautiful.
I'm sharing this image, and it's by the photographer Kyle Weeks, and it is of a palm tapper in Namibia. And palm tapping is actually a practice that is common to many, many cultures. A lot of cultures actually use parts of the palm leaves. I mean, palm oil, for example, is one of them. In Singapore, I mean, like in Singapore, a lot of desserts incorporate the use of gula melaka, which is palm sugar. And palm sugar is also tapped from palm trees. And so when I saw this image, I was like, and this was when I was, you know, conceptualizing this botanical design studio and what Human House is going to be, I was really arrested by it. And that's because even though like this was, you know, an image from Namibia, like it spoke to me. Like, you know, I've seen palm trees like that.
Yeah.
It had a kind of serenity, a kind of authenticity, a kind of beauty that like I was just so arrested by. And it really gave me a kind of sense of place without being prescriptive. Yeah, I love this as a mood image. And then moving forward, I think this is something that we really try to capture, a sense of a place. And this is an installation that we did for a wedding. And this is the backdrop against which the couple said their vows. Uh, and
That's lovely.
you know, I really thought that the mood I was trying to evoke was something of almost like a tropical sigh.
Oh.
And
What did they say about it? I mean, did they have any, I mean, even from the choice of colors and mood, like what was their contribution? Did they give you kind of a free will on this one? Like how do people react to
I'm
their
just so
work?
grateful for the couple that commissioned this, because you know they had seen our work before and they were just like, unleash it.
Oh, that's amazing. That's like every
Unleash,
creative
yeah.
person's dream, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I just feel like we operate best when we're given the legs to run, actually,
Freedom.
the freedom to run. Um, I really love this piece. This is a piece that the New York Times Style magazine commissioned.
What was the brief for this one? Like what
and
did you have
it's,
to do?
I think they just asked us to create a botanical sculpture that almost felt like a portrait of your studio, you know.
Oh, that's cool.
And I think it incorporates so many things that we love. You know, Lotus Roots are so amazing. Like, you know, like the cross-sectional beauty of it, the fact that it's buried in mud, and you know, we wanted to like, you know, really just create this almost a mound of Lotus Root. And then this heliconia, which is so crazy. I mean, look at it. It looks like teeth.
It looks also like birds. It looks like many, like, it has so much movement. Like for me, it's quite yeah, dynamic. I think that's what I see first, that it's moving and growing and developing. I don't know if that was part of your thinking, but
You know, it took us a few days to get here.
I'm sure.
We try to make it look like it's effortless, but it did take a while. And I mean, like, you know, this was version like 4 before we thought. Like,
Yeah, of course. And what about the contrast in colors? Because I think that's quite, like, that was for me what struck me as well, the difference in the mud and then the colorful part too.
You know, we really, you know, mud and Lotus Roots convey such heaviness in its, you know, like in its actual origin. And we wanted to contrast that with something that was like vibrant and like that had so much dynamism and movement. So like it really is two worlds clashing together, the birds and the ground, the ground basically. Yeah. And you know, we absolutely love collaborating with people who with other brands and with people who share our ethos. And you know, this is Ang Shamugam. It's a local fashion label, and they've expanded since into flatware and dinnerware. And these are the launch. This was the media launch for their plates. And if you look at the design of the plates, they have a very traditional kind of blue and white motif that is updated for today. And we really wanted to use a material that, and the designer often incorporates elements of their Asian heritage into the pieces. And so the chrysanthemums, the white bitter gourd, and the kaffir lime on the table is just really honoring that tradition. But also you can see Romanesco cauliflower as well, and even like amaryllis. And this cultivar of amaryllis is called tarantula, which I love. And that together with the firework spider chrysanthemums, tarantula and spider. So that really was, you know, we get a bit of a kick with this kind of like.
Yeah, it looks like it.
So like
looks
the
like
chrysanthemums are very Asian, and then the amaryllis, which is not Asian, but still have the same spider names. I mean, like,
and in terms of choosing color here, do you get mostly, I guess you get inspired by the piece here, which would be the dinnerware, but also about the space? Because I see that the colors are a bit, I mean, they're complementary. So I'm just curious how you chose the palette.
For sure. I think on the table, we really wanted, because a lot of the cuisine of, so this media launch is at Violet Un's kitchen, and a lot of the cuisine is inspired by Asian herbs and spices. And there is like, we wanted to create like a zip of freshness on the table. And that's why we have the lime green there to like, kind of just like, you know, like when you bite into a lime, I wanted that feeling on the table. And so that's what's here. And then we wanted to echo the blue and white motif in what was above the table. And so here is like really almost like clouds of bougainvillea and cymbidiums that have been dyed blue. And so the blue and white theme is like echoed above as it is on the table with the dinnerware. And I really want to give a shout out to bougainvillea. And I think, we talk about relationships with nature. I've had an evolving relationship with bougainvillea. One of my favorite florists and a really esteemed colleague of ours in the floral world, her name is Ren. I'm going to borrow from her. She calls a lot of people, she calls out what she believes, and she's termed, a lot of people have plant blindness. And it's basically because you're saturated in the environment that you grew up in, that you don't really notice anything or pick out these things. And I'm really, I've had an evolving relationship with bougainvillea, and that it's so commonplace in Singapore that you like don't even think twice about it. And really, it's arrestingly beautiful. And so what we've done here is to actually painstakingly taken off all the leaves in the bougainvillea, and it from afar it looks like a real cloud of like even cherry blossoms. And I want to be quite, in a sense, insistent on this. It is not about substituting something that we have, like, oh, we don't have cherry blossoms, so we use bougainvillea. Really not about that. It's really about taking the material for what it is and really enjoying it. And here it's a time to actually plug my only piece of advice for people. And I think for all of you who live in Singapore or Southeast Asia, this book has been really integral to the life of our studio. It's 1001 garden plants in Singapore. And my copy is very worn out.
Oh, that's awesome.
Markers, but it's published by the National Parks Board, and it really is an encyclopedia of the most common plants that you've seen around. And I think this is such an important guide to what you see around you. And if you see something that you like in the streets, look it up, know its name.
You probably know it inside out, right? Like you're now kind of like, I know the book, I know the page, I know where to find everything.
I have, like some plants I'm not so interested in, but other plants I am very interested in. So like in some ways I've grown this, but I'm also rediscovering a lot of things too. So it's dynamic. It's absolutely dynamic.
So just being a little bit aware of our time here and how long we have for our audience, I wanted to kind of get your input for your next. I know there's just so much beautiful work to go through. If you want to maybe pick like a couple of favorites that you'd like to.
Sure, I'm gonna cycle through this.
Yeah.
Totally. I would. This is a staircase for installed in a client's home, and we really went all out tropical with this. There's so much detail here. The lotus is blowing the wind, the fallen grass, for example, all the orchids that look so precious.
It also goes so good with the staircase, right? Like I think that's again your architecture eye, went there.
Really wanted to honor the beauty of all these mid-century curves. And this in their backyard, we wanted to create a kind of installation that felt like a cumulonimbus cloud, but also like just vibrant with color. And this is right before we took the installation down, and this was at dusk around 5 p.m. And the scale of this I wanted to show. It's almost like we're working on a scale that's on the level of landscape. Always we try to convey a sense of freshness in a lot of our arrangements, and this is something that we've made at Tanjung Beach Club that's kind of celebratory and has a lot of the kind of movement that we desire. I would definitely dwell a little bit more on this. And I think
your favorite piece, right?
Projects that we've done, and a bunch of us in the industry, photographers, stylists, came together, and we were like, hey, you know what? We want to do a photo shoot. And this is actually a real couple. So this was not, these were actual, their wedding photos. We wanted to create a shoot where we didn't have the constraints that we would normally have, and we really wanted to create a vision for what I would say is a contemporary celebration. One of the things that, I ask my clients about, at a first meeting is like, do you have a favorite flower, or do you have a favorite color? And it's interesting that a lot of times, like we have a lot of people who struggle with even naming a flower that they like. And this is really, my plug about developing a personal relationship with nature.
Yeah.
I feel like you should know. You should know.
Totally.
And it's
And
really
you'd be able to then
building.
pull from that, right? Like once you know, it's easier to mix things too.
Yeah. And I really feel like that's part of the building block of your identity and your connection with your surroundings. Yeah, so it's integral. And so we have, this turmeric on the table, this hanging installation that's really like a cacophony of noise. We have hanging rocks, which is kind of bizarre. We have these gourds, which that look like squiggly, wiggly shapes. And who's to say you can't do that?
Yeah. I actually was wondering when I saw this photo, I was like, oh, that looks like a really well lit, wedding venue. How is it so perfect? But now it makes sense. This came together without the constraint of that.
Yeah. And it was actually shot in an art gallery.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of these pieces were inspired by artwork from artists that we love. And this is, the piece that we made for their solemnization shoot. And you can see that this, we actually used a real plant in here, and we eventually cut it off from the pot. But it's actually Sandpaper Vine, and it really looks like wisteria. I think a lot of our people may know wisteria a little bit better because it grows really prolifically and blooms mid-spring in the Northern Hemisphere. And it has kind of sprightly quality that we contrast with this heaviness of like seaweed. And this is exactly what I mean by constraints. I mean, like, I think people of Asian heritage may be a bit nervous about using something so dark, and maybe, literally this was like foraged from the sea. And it was just a joy to put together, and it had all the kind of heaviness and gravity that we were after. This is them with the piece. And I really wanted to include this because, it's a really profound thing for me to be able to participate in our clients' lives at moments in their lives and personal history which are so significant. And, in a macro view of this, I mean, on the left is a picture from the 1880s of an Indian couple in Singapore. And this is probably a portrait, maybe not at their wedding, but maybe just as a couple. But I have so many questions. I have questions about the background, the props that they're wearing, the props that they're holding, the reason they chose to style it this way, the jewelry. And I often think about our pieces 100 years from now and how people might interpret it. And it's such a precious artifact of time, of personal history, of anthropology, of ethnography. And I never discount that. And I almost say, you have in some ways the power to shape tradition, practices and how things evolve. And and the entire team is just so thrilled to be in that position.
Contribute to the history, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to show this because this is kind of crazy. This is like from 1874, and this is how you can incorporate. It's a guidebook for how you can incorporate palms into your home. And so this is a collection of plants on a dining table, and it's so hardcore. They actually tell you how to install it in your dining table. And a lot of people say this is the moment for plants. The world has never been more houseplant obsessed. And I would argue that no, this happened in 1874.
That's a good one.
And you will never be as hardcore as this, so don't even try. And we were really inspired by this to give a kind of like postmodern kind of interpretation of this in this pastoral tropical setting where the style of the furniture is clearly postmodern. And so it's a clash of different periods and almost like borderline kitsch, but like it's something that we love. Really just finding ways of expressing joy through plants and flowers in a way that feels contemporary and fresh on the table. And this is actually a project in London. We were invited by the Singapore Tourism Board to give a vision of Singapore in London. I think this is an important piece, and this is the second last project I'm going to present. It was important to us that it didn't feel too beautiful. And I think a lot of the times colonial depictions of tropical flora have in some ways been cleaned up a little bit. You know, it's a little bit more serene. And we wanted this to feel like a tropical storm.
It does look like it. It does feel like it. It does. It feels like it just was taken from Singapore and landed there.
Yeah.
That's the vision it gives me, which is,
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's amazing. It kind of transports you in space, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, discounting the sustainability factor of like importing a lot of these ingredients, but you know, I think this is something that we were quite adamant about, that it didn't feel too beautiful. And it's actually something that's reflected in a lot of our work. You know, nature does not stage manage and give you its best face all the time. It does not. And so I feel like a lot of the time when we're after a kind of naturalism, sometimes it's not pretty. Some of that detail in here. The last project that I want to end off with is one of my favorites, and we were commissioned by Helen to make a botanical installation inspired by the color that they had developed with the Pantone Color Institute. It is an entirely new shade of purple that they developed, and that was inspired by a limited edition of whiskey that they had developed. And you know, we had dyed these mushrooms with a violet extract and made it into a kind of like weird sculpture. And, you know, this is an example of how ingredients kind of like, this is a really ingredient focused piece where we had found these amazing taproots from cassava, tapioca, kind of tapioca. And then we penned these mushrooms that were kind of growing out of it. And it really was a reflection of both the color associated with the whiskey, but also it was about a kind of earthiness.
Yeah, it does feel very earthy, and it also feels earthy and unusual. And I think that's probably just translating the brand's vision of their drink too, right? Like how do you, because it's a commercial project, I guess, do you take cues from the product you're speaking to? Not just creating something to complement it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, this has been amazing. I have so many questions, as you know. I've been asking you so many questions in the past few days, but this has been for me such a pleasure. So I really thank you for taking us through all your work. I'm definitely not going to be a stranger to you. Just expect to hear from me soon with other questions or other, you know, inquiries that are similar to Creative Mornings. I think it's such a good opportunity for people to know about their plants in Singapore, but also, you know, the creativity around it and really what a vision can change. And that book, we'll write that book in our social. We'll make sure people are aware of it. I think that's like a Bible, right? So yeah, thank you so much, John. I'm going to actually pass the mic to Sarah for some questions for Q&A with the two of you. So thanks again.
Thank you. There's so many questions from our audience this morning, but I think we'll choose a couple. Okay. And then, yeah, okay. So the first one that, okay, first of all, I didn't know that corn is grass. That was something new every day. Okay, so one of the questions from John, for John from Olivia Griselda, is that how do you experiment in making these creations? Could you share any story of creation that didn't work out from how you originated?
Oh my goodness, so many. I feel like what you see is like what we consider to be successes, but like really, we experiment every day, and it's, you know, sometimes we don't experiment for any specific purpose. It's just like, what do you think about putting these two things together? Or sometimes we'd find material that have been mixed up and put in a bucket, and we're like, oh my goodness, that works, you know. And we try to understand and articulate why it works, and in doing that, we then have a kind of vocabulary of successes that we work towards something, a product. And I feel like a lot of the times it is this kind of repository of successes and failures that inform the kind of intuition that we have with the project. So we really don't wait till, you know, to get inspired by something. A lot of the times, like, you know, it just comes and we just like build that up. And in terms of failures, so many. I mean, you know, I think at the end of every single event that we've done or installation that we've done, we actually have a very rigorous process of review. And one of the questions we have is, what would you do differently? Or was it successful? Was the client happy? Are we happy with it? And so that is actually the foundation of our studio, a commitment to a kind of criticality. Yeah.
Right. I remember you shared with us that there's a power in having like the first idea. You know, usually like your first solution is beautiful. So yeah, I think mistakes, nature has that also, right? So there's some beauty in that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. The second question, which I thought was very interesting as well, is a question from Mei Ling to you is, if you're hosting a dinner party with a crafted centerpiece, of course, which 3 people, living or dead,
oh my goodness,
would you love to have at your table?
Okay, I feel like I have to, like, there's so many, but I want to make this botanically related. So I would invite, first of all, I would say Emily Thompson. So Emily Thompson is one of our favorite florists or botanical designers ever. And she really was such a large inspiration to the development of our studio. And I think, you know, looking at a lot of her work, she really created some kind of a roadmap, I would say, for the existence of this studio. And she incorporates a lot of elements into her work that are narrative, that are definitely not, when you see a piece, it's never a one-liner. There's always like, you could write essays from looking at her installations. And like, yeah, so definitely Emily Thompson. I would also invite, just for shits and giggles, I would like to invite a comedian.
Of course.
And I think the comedian of the moment that is, what's his name? Oh my God, he's an SNL. It's like the Asian guy on SNL. Oh God, Bowen Yang. And I think the third person I would invite is someone maybe a little bit more serious. I'll invite Jesus.
There's definitely going to be some interesting conversations there. So I think that's amazing. All right. Thank you so much, John, for
Thank you.
with us this morning.
My pleasure.